So getting back into Overlord, the light novels, the manga, the side story stuff, it's really been exciting to kind of get back into Overlord again, read the light novels and go from start to finish and do a more analytical breakdown of the journey for, of course, Ainz and of course the other Floor Guardians, because it is definitely a series that is very rich in game mechanics, lore, just character building, and also a lot of politics. It's one of the things that I do really like about Overlord is some of the politics that go in it and how it doesn't give you a sort of sunshine and rainbows and daffodils all day kind of approach. It kind of shows you the more gritty version of how politics works, which also other mangas and light novels in the isekai area do also do that as well, and even non-isekais do that as well. But a lot of isekais do try and paint this whole picture of sunshine and daffodils and rainbows all day. It's nice to see something with a little bit more grit, a little bit more realisticness when it comes to how characters respond to different situations, and Ainz, as I'm going to refer to him, is no exception. And especially in the early stages of this volume, one of the things that I thought was really interesting and really fun to read is how he approaches the whole situation of the closing of the servers and of course the other guild members, some of them coming back and some of them not. And it's, again, to kind of give context, again, the beginning, for those that don't remember, this game's shutting down. The servers have a limited amount of time before everything's shutting down. Ainz is sitting there sort of waiting things out and waiting for the other guild members to come back and say their last goodbyes, waves, and all that kind of stuff. And you can definitely feel that there's a little bit of bitterness in, of course, Ainz and how he feels about the whole situation, but at the same time, he understands as well. And that is one thing that I think it's a double-edged sword. You can understand why they had to abandon the game because, again, real life, work, commitments, family, etc. Some might have had children, some might have got married, which comes with children as well. Some might have had more work commitments, some might have had health issues, or some might have just gotten very bored of the game. And that, again, is how real life works, and that's something that I see in MMOs all the time. I've played MMOs for a very, very long time, which is why I really love these kind of light novel series, because I have a deep connection to MMOs, and these also kind of bring back a lot of those memories. And again, you can understand that, but at the same time, he maintained that guild building, and that would not have been easy. It would have been insanely time consuming. I mean, you look at other games like Final Fantasy XIV, where they've got like 3 different house sizes, and it goes all the way up to mansion. Of course, it's not something as expansive as, say, like Tomb. I would love to see something like that for like a guild establishment for, say, like Final Fantasy. But again, who maintains it? Who has the control? And that's another thing, is that he is the guild master, so he's put it upon himself to say, hey, I'm going to maintain this, keep this going, and hope that some of the guild members do return. And none of them do. He's all on his own. And so you can understand that bit of bitterness in him, thinking that he's kind of been, you know, left a little bit on his own. It's understandable. And I think that also sort of coincides with Albedo, because Albedo definitely mentions in this volume that, you know, the Supreme Beings abandoned the other NPCs, and then of course Ainz as well. So it does make me wonder, and it maybe is for another topic video, how Albedo's mindset has been influenced by Ainz. But you can definitely see that she's also very bitter as well, which, again, from an outside perspective, she doesn't know about what their real lives are like and how, again, it's just a game and now it's been brought to life. So she doesn't understand the realisticness of what was going on behind the scenes, which, again, understandable. But you can also understand Ainz's frustration, and maybe some of those guild members should have maybe stepped in and said, hey, we're quitting the game, we're not going to be coming back or anytime soon, you don't have to maintain things, go find some new members, go find some new friends, because he very much is lonely. That's one thing that I've noticed in this volume and throughout, is that he is very lonely. He admits that he had no real female companionship, and the real social interaction for him would have been that game. And if he lost all those guild members because of real life commitments, he would have been flat on his own. So having the NPCs there now, because of course he's been transported to this new world, Riv, the tomb, and everything River, he's finally got some social interaction. He's able to mingle with others, even though at the beginning he's very paranoid. He's trying to work out if they're going to betray him, how skills and spells work. And that's one thing that I really love about the light novel series in the very early stages, is that it's very realistic. And again, it establishes the fact that he knows he's in a foreign environment, in the sense that he's been transported to this. He thinks that maybe this might be game related, in that, hey, you know, maybe it's a glitch, maybe there's some weird weird shenanigans going on, but very quickly is he trying to establish of what he can and cannot do and what others can and cannot do, and where loyalty stands as far as the other NPCs and if they will turn on him, and trying to give the impression that he is, again, a supreme being, but at the same time trying to keep that image up, which again I think is just the funny part about it, is how they see him and then how we see him, and it's just that funny difference between that. And especially with the fact that one of my favorite actual moments in the Overlord series, one of them, is of course the fight with, of course, the slain Theocracy, and how Ainz just completely dominates that moment. And that's where Albedo does that whole he's so freaking cool, and that's what she says in the anime, and it's very much the same. Again, they see him as like that cool dad kind of moment, you know. He's so awesome, he's so, you know, nice, but at the same time he's showing his raw power and dominance, and he's a supreme being with great leadership and unthinkable knowledge that we can never comprehend. And that's just the fun part about it, is how they see him and then how he monologues and that difference of it. And it is good that the anime also does keep the monologuing in it as well, because let's be honest, some animes do have a tendency to remove the monologuing, which the light novels have. Of course, it could, you know, not remove all the details, but again, light novel to animes are always going to be some differences, but the main components for the monologuing for the light novels was there, so I do really like that. The other thing to also note is that, of course, as he's trying to establish things, he's testing out his abilities, testing out the staff, you know, he's going down there, he's talking to the two twins themselves, you know, interacting with them. And that's one thing you notice very quickly, is that these NPCs, they've been handcrafted, like fine-tuned, like artists. There's so much attention to detail down to what they're wearing, their actual stats, abilities, etc., even their personalities and how they interact with other NPCs as well. And the two twins, and then Shoutir and that interaction, and then Shoutir and Albedo, and then Demi and Sebes, or Demi and Albedo. Again, it comes down to the real fine details of everything in that tomb has just been finely tuned, and that's what's just so amazing about it. You can tell the love and attention that's gone into it, but you can also see that they really do look up to Ainz, and they, you know, love and adore him for being the supreme being. But they also notice a different side of him, especially when he shows, you know, that kindness of being like, here's, you know, a glass of water, stay hydrated. And then he summons, you know, a particular individual from his staff and lets them play with it to test out abilities and all that kind of stuff. There's some really fun interactions that kind of, again, establish and build on those characters while also achieving the objective that Ainz wanted to achieve. So that's one of the things that I really love. It's that smooth transition, and it kind of gives you that sort of two birds with one stone kind of approach. But in this case, it's even more than that, because he's achieving many different things, and that continues and continues and continues right down to the point where, of course, he is then also investigating the village, and that's where the village whole situation kind of unfolds. And yeah, let's just say it isn't pretty. It's pretty gruesome. I will say, though, there are some attentions to details missing from the anime to the light novels. Like, you can definitely see that it's a lot more brutal in the actual light novels, which, again, understandable. Again, attention to detail is always going to be fine-tuned, but I really do find the whole mirror situation to be the most fascinating. And the reason why is because, honestly, Ainz was going to let that village rot, burn to the ground, nothing come of it, and that was the end. Like, he's just like, there's no emotions in him. But because Sebes is there, and he remembers Sebes's creator and the personality behind that, and one of the quotes that he remembered when he first started the game, it entices him to go save the village, which he then also takes Albedo. Albedo's a little bit difficult at times, a little bit over emotional when it comes to certain things, but again, she is workable when it comes to those things. And he's using that as a chance to probe the area, learn about the people, learn about the monsters, the economy. And again, it goes back to that realisticness, just as before when he was in the tomb, you know, getting to know the other NPCs and interacting with them. He's probing them, working out what does and does not work, not just for himself, but for others, and how he interacts with others and how they interact. It's testing all the limits, getting as much intel as possible before he makes any big decision. And that is very much the case for the surroundings as well. And then, of course, going to the village and sort of learning about the lay of the land, and then, of course, saving them from, of course, the same theocracy. And that is where you also meet Gazif. I love Gazif. Gazif has always been one of my favorite characters because I love his personality. I love his shiveriness, his ironclad sort of principles, And that's just something that really stands out in this volume, and it's even something Ainz even notes very heavily in the actual light novels, where he's sitting there going, he misjudged Gazeth, and so did the villagers, because he is so driven by principle of who he is. He's there to serve the people, to protect the people, even though he doesn't have to. He could have ran, but he doesn't. He draws the same theocracy out and tries to fight them out in the open to try and give the villagers time to run away. But of course, Ainz, being a little bit more cunning that he is, he uses a little bit of a switcheroo and then just completely slaughters the hell out of them. And of course, there's a lot of little details there where it comes to Ainz sort of trying to understand about Yggdrasil, the magic that they possess. He's a little bit paranoid, worried that they might have an ace up their sleeve, and it's understandable. I mean, you've got to go into that situation not assuming the enemy is super weak and that you're super OP. As he said, even the villagers could be level 100 for all he knows. He can't just make assumptions. So he goes into it very, very paranoid. And that's, again, as I said, understandable. But you got to remember, he was willing to let that village burn and die. But because Sebas was there, the influence on, of course, the Supreme Being that made Sebas influences him. And it's one of the things that he doesn't have the emotions because of the fact that he's a skeletal overlord, even though to a point he does and he doesn't, because some of those emotions do brew up, but then the system kind of kicks in and knocks it down a peg or two, which in its sense is just basically he's almost emotionless, except for situations like where Albetta gets a little bit excited, etc, etc. So it's understandable. And then right at the end, of course, at the light novels, that's where Ainz makes the announcement that he's changing his name from Momon to Ainz itself, because of course he wants to get his name out there, get the glory of Ainz and the Great Tomb out there so that he can possibly find his other guild members if they are out there. And that also leads into a misunderstanding, of course, with Demiurge. This is where it becomes a very much of a consistent thing, though. Misunderstanding. Demiurge interprets certain things that Ainz say as, let's conquer the world. And it's like, well, it's not technically what he kind of said, but then at the same time, that's where it leads to that misunderstanding, and it just kind of cascades into this sort of epic tale of course, Ainz trying to get his name out there, trying to find his other guild members, and that leads to him changing his name, and of course them beginning the first major stage of their operations. It's a brilliant volume to open up with. I love how smooth and easy it is to transition from component to component, introducing many characters, many different aspects of the world, and it's very easy to kind of absorb all that information. And you can read it multiple times as well and still learn little things as well, like the Death Knight. You can learn those little details. If you forget some little things, you read it again and you remember some other stuff that happened. So it's one thing that I really love about Overlord. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What are your thoughts about Overlord? What did you think of Volume 1? I will be continuing to process through the volumes again, giving my analysis, also doing individual separate videos on different characters, different major components of major story events, different places, etc. You know me, I'll be getting back into Overlord again because I've had a bit of a break, and now I've got some new fresh things that I want to talk about and just kind of have a different perspective now that it's been several years since the last time I talked about Overlord, and also getting ready for the new season, the new movie, and the new volumes coming out. So again, love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. But if you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe for more anime content, and I'll see you, beautiful nerds, in the next video.